Of course, your app will have access to a server because you might want to store some data in a secure place, or maybe you want to upload images or have authentication and so on. So for this, we're going to be using Firebase, and this Firebase is the most popular service for apps. So Firebase follows the same rules as a web server, and at the end, you can do pretty much the same things. But you know, some things are going to change. How to store, how to fetch, how to do some things. So it has its pros and cons because it is a little bit different from a regular server. And of course, we will discuss this on the following sections, and we will get to the pros and cons on the practice app. So we're going to use Firebase because it's really easy to use and easy to set up. And of course, this is a React Native, not a database course. So that's why we are using this one, because it's simple to understand. Now, Firebase, like any modern service, works with JSON and provides you a very cool authentication API. Now, of course, Firebase is the most popular, but you could use whatever you want as a server. You can create a node server and host it on Heroku or DigitalOcean or whatever. It doesn't matter. You can use whatever. You can even use a PHP server, you know, something like Laravel with a REST service. You can do that, no problem. So, okay, so first we need to learn a little bit. If you already know how to use Firebase, you just keep move forward. The only thing that you need to know is that on this course, on the practice project, we're going to use Firebase as a REST API, as a REST service, right? And we are not going to install the SDK or the connector or whatever that you want to call it. And we're going to talk about that later. So first we need to we need to enter Firebase. Just go to Firebase, and you're going to have, after you log in, and this Firebase is from Google. So if you have a Google account, you have a Firebase account. So once you're logged in, you need to go to the console, right? Okay, so whenever you are inside the console, it's going to load and it's going to give you some information of the projects. I have a few projects, test projects. So we need to add a new project so we can work on this one. And we're going to be, again, using the animation, the one where we're using the animation, the project 3. You can start a new project if you want. It's completely up to you. So inside of here, I'm going to click on add a project. It's going to take a minute. And then, of course, you will need to put a name. So I'm going to say project and then 3. All right. So then, of course, it's going to give you an ID. You can edit the ID because by default you have a random ID. And then, of course, the country. I'm going to just select United States. Doesn't matter for now. And I'm going to create a project. So this is going to take a minute. All right. So after it's done, we're going to click continue. And that it's going to take you to the dashboard or viewer project. Right here, you can switch projects. So, of course, you have a lot of tools we can use with Firebase. But the most important tools we're going to be using, they are under develop. And we will be using database and authentication this one. Later, much later, we're going to see how the storage and how the functions work, because we need to do something here with storage and functions. So the one we care right now is going to be the database. Then we will do authentication. Now on database, inside database, whenever you enter, it's going to ask you what kind of a database you want to create. We're going to select real-time database. So after it's done, it's going to take you here. And this is pretty much your database. You can have like a big object, and that is what essentially is, where you're going to be storing things, right? So this is really simple. We're going to work with this in a minute. So before we can start adding things, of course, inside any database, you have rules. You need to set some rules. And if you go to rules, by default, the users cannot use the database unless they are authenticated. Now, since we are learning, and we need to first learn how to upload, how to read, and how to write, we need to change this because we need to be authenticated. So we are not going to do this. We're going to do the authentication later. So I'm going to change this to true, just like this, and this one to true as well. So any user with our link and our API, our key, they're going to be able to read information from our database and write to our database. In real life, of course, that is not a good idea because you're going to let anyone use your database, and you don't want that. But later we're going to be changing this. So just change it to true and then click on publish. It's going to take a second, and then rules published. Okay, and that is good. That's the only thing we need to know right now. Now we need to know how to store data, how we can pass data to the database. Oh, sorry. something happened. Get started. Let's see if it's yeah, okay, it's remembering. That's good. So now we need to know in how to store data. So we're going to go to the next section. We will create a new component where we're going to be sending data and storing it in our database.